Can I get a darker room? Can I get a darker room, please? Let me get a darker room. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Relax over there, shouty. It ain't even like that. Hey, how do you guys feel about the glasses, though? Emily Sherrill. Rachel, right here. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You're not feeling it? Somebody. It looks pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I think I'm gonna keep it on the whole time and just talk like this. What if I was this kind of speaker and just always, Olivia, what do you think? Olivia, Bosco, what do you think, baby? Glasses or no? Wow, really? After all the times I've affirmed you and loved you and cared for you and done all, you are so mean. I'm gonna keep them on because I have self-esteem. Right, boys? You guys are no good at all. No good at all. Well, welcome everybody. So happy to have you guys. I know some of us are pouring in last minute. So happy to have you guys. Those who are online, welcome. We're excited for tonight. As you guys may or may not be aware, tonight is a very special night. Now, every thing that I try to do here, my goal is to try to reach high school people, high school kids. Obviously, you're like saying to yourself, well, Javon, we know that. Like, we're not dumb, we're not stupid. But I like to go to places where no one else is going. If that makes sense. I like to go to places where a lot of people like try to hide, and a lot of people try to really not give much weight and give much conversation to it. And one of those places is what we're going to be talking about today. And that's this theme of addiction. I'm going to get into that a little bit more later on. But the reason why we're giving it so much light, because addiction has created so much darkness. Let me say that one more time. The reason why we're giving this particular topic so much light is because of what it's called. So I'm going to talk about that in just a little bit more. We got some special speakers. I brought a professional here, somebody that has more degrees than the Fahrenheit here, talking about this particular topic. But I want to get you guys excited. We have a full summer, a really full summer, like super full, like full when you go to Chipotle, full, like full summer. On the 27th, we are celebrating our seniors. Where my seniors at? Where my seniors at? We're going to be celebrating the class of 2021. We're going to be throwing a party for them. Our girl, Jennifer Crossno, and the team have been gearing up for that day, for that night. But also, most importantly, listen to this. So, as you guys know, we have so many seniors that we're going to be honoring and blessing and hoping for the best because obviously, unfortunately, they got to move on to a new season. But with every season that ends, there is a new season that begins. And the new season that begins is the incoming freshmen. There are a lot of young people that are coming here. We did the count, we did the math. We have over 15 eighth graders coming up. So this means this. My to-be seniors, my to-be juniors, we got a responsibility. We got a responsibility. There are young people coming up that need our example. Seniors, you know what it was like to be a freshman coming in here. Remember that, Julia? You had braces. Your hair was a lot shorter. She was a little bit more knock-kneaded when she walked in. Olivia, she had braces too, I think. You know, she had purple hair. Anyway, we need to get to the worship part. I'm excited for it. So, man, let's celebrate those who are going to a new season of life, but also, most importantly, let's celebrate the incoming young people as well, because we're here to reach generation on generations. College kids become parents tomorrow, become CEOs and business owners, whatever it may be. So we're super excited for you. Will you stand up and worship with us today? So go ahead and stand up. I'm going to say a prayer. Father, we are here to quiet our hearts so you can speak loudly into the places where we need it the most. Father, addiction is a serious issue in our world today. And as I've stated before, and I'll keep saying it again, and it's a theme here, Lord, but I feel like it's something that's so consistent with your character and who you are. With every problem, you have the solution. You have the solution to this addiction epidemic. And while we're all nervous about COVID, there's one thing that's spreading probably just like COVID, and that's this thing called addiction. And it's creating more fear and more anxiety and more depression and more loneliness and more isolation. And there are so many people who feel that there's no way out and they just feel so trapped. But Lord, I pray that they would realize and they would understand that no matter where they are, hope is always present and available because you're there. I pray that you would speak to the kid and to the leader, to whoever it is today, who has a little bit of hesitance when it comes to this whole God thing. They're unassured, they're unaware, they're not really sure what they believe and whatnot, but I pray that you would soften their hearts and they would move to faith. But also, there is somebody in this room today that is battling through addiction. They're battling through it right now. And they've tried every intervention, every group, counseling, but they haven't tried you. Because, Lord, once we get a dose of you, everything has to change. Everything has to change. Once we get a dose of this grace and this peace and this mercy and this love, things change. And not only do things change, but there are some things that fall off us. And one of those are the things that are trapping us. We love you. Now stir our hearts up for worship today. Help us to lean into you. We love you and we glorify you. In Jesus' perfect name, amen.
I keep fighting voices in my mind say I'm not enough. Every single lie tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. You say I am loved, but I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong, but I think I'm weak. And you say I am held when I am falling short. When I don't belong, you say I am yours. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. You, I find my worth in you, I find my identity. You say I'm strong, but I think is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, He has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, He died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. My Father's house is for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. Not for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house is a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
Take a seat, take a seat. How powerful and amazing is that song? Love that song. Real quick, I just got a special message that's tuning in and knowing what's going on tonight. For those who do not know who I am, I feel a little bit ridiculous saying this because some of you are like, we already know who you are, Jovan. But there are some people that are unfamiliar with me. My name is Jovan. I happen to be the student pastor here at the church. I've been the student pastor for the last 6.5 years. Yes, I have been annoyed by teenagers for 6.5 years. And it is prepping me for dead life. I have a 1.5-year-old, and one thing that I love doing, as the song so clearly states, is that I love people seeing the freedom that's in Christ. Because, for me, I didn't have that freedom at one point in my life. Now, it's something I have to continuously go back to and remind myself of. But the one thing that I've noticed in the 6.5 years that I've been leading here in this ministry, the one thing that I've noticed is that people are trying to tap into the realm of freedom and trying to find it. And so today we just want to talk about addiction. We want to talk about it from a side where God fully becomes the place of freedom, where Jesus is the place of freedom. But we also want to bring in some outside sources to help educate us. Because the truth of the matter is, there are some of you in this room today that are probably thinking to yourself, well, I really don't need to listen to today's message because it doesn't apply to me, because I don't struggle with any type of addiction. And I understand the trigger to just say to yourself, I'm just going to tune today out. But the truth of the matter is, we all are susceptible to become trapped one day. Because one thing could happen: a breakup, a divorce, a death in the family. Somebody rejects you, hurts you, says something about you. And what happens is you're going to go to a place, and this is typically how addiction sometimes works in the earlier stages, is typically you go to a place where you just want to numb. You just want to escape. We all got a place we escape to. And when we think about addiction, I know a lot of you, the first thing you think about is like, well, I'm not addicted to drinking because I never drank before, or I drink, but I really don't drink, and it's here and there, and I might have a few at a graduation party, but I don't get too crazy like my friends do. Or I'm not addicted to marijuana or weed or anything like that. Like, I get it. A lot of us like to maximize the things like that, but minimize the other things. Like, addiction comes in the form of shopping, spending. Like, Amazon's at my door every day. Like, that's a problem. The Amazon guy knew my name. Hey, Jovan, how you doing? Here you go. Like, that's a problem. But we like to minimize it, and we like to maximize it because that's just what we do. We like to push away all the other things like shopping or gambling or pornography or all the other things that we feel like are just minimal in our lives, and we like to suppress them and push them down. A lot of us are addicted to ourselves, and we don't even know it. We're addicted to be noticed. We want to be seen. And so today, I want to talk about these three things before we bring up our first speaker, and I am excited for you guys to hear our speakers tonight. There are two people that are going to be so vulnerable and so deep and so rich on their experience, both from a professional level, but also from a spiritual level, how they set free from it. And I hope you're not the one that says, well, this has nothing to do with me. Because guess what? Temptation is real. Temptation is serious. And it's at your door every single day. It's at your door when you go to these parties. And you tell yourself, I'll never be like that kid over in the corner binging. It's at the door at your schools. It's at the door with sports and all the other things. There are so many things tempting us and wanting to rob our freedom. So today, I want to be predicated off these three things. If you're taking down notes, you're more than welcome to take these down. Number one, I want to be honest about the addiction. Because a lot of us are professional liars. Y'all laugh, but it's serious. A lot of us are really good at lying. Not only do we lie about what we do, but we cover up what we do. We're professional liars. We're professional people who cover up the most. And I want you to understand this. You will never embrace true freedom unless you are fully honest. Let me say that one more time. You will never embrace true freedom. God says, I have something available for each and every one of you, but you will never face true freedom unless you are fully honest. But a lot of us like to push away from the honesty because we're afraid of the consequences that follow it. We're afraid of the shame, and really a lot of people hide because of shame. Because of shame. You don't want your parents to know what you do. You don't want your friends and your pastor and your leaders to know what you do. You don't want any of that. But God tells us that honesty is the pathway to freedom. Freedom. But also, number two, I want you to know that there's always this thing that we can always bend towards, and this idea of help. In the midst of your addiction, there's always help. Because we always like to think we're alone in it. We always like to think like I'm the only one that struggles with it. Nobody battles with the addictions that I have. And little do you know, there is somebody in this room today, if you're one of those who say to yourself, man, I have that addiction and I got this thing going on. I feel like I have to smoke in order to feel good. I feel like I have to drink in order to feel good. Like I feel like I have to do these things in order to suppress and to push away these other things. I guarantee you this, there is somebody in this room that feels and does the same thing as you. And they want to be free. But there's help. Today we're going to talk about that help. We're not going to shy away from it. We're going to talk about that help. And God provides those helpful things. We're not going to sit back and be like, just trust God in it. Like, that's great. That's awesome. But sometimes God say, all right, but now I need you to take this next step, and I need you to go see somebody. Now I need you to invite professional help. Now I need you to do this. But last but not least, we talked about being honest. We talked about always seeking for help. But point number three, most important one, that you're never absent of hope. You're never absent in hope. And hope is not in what the world can give you, but what Christ can give you. Hope is something that we always have at our hands. Hope is something that we always have at our disposal. As a matter of fact, I want to share this quote before I bring up our first speaker. Somebody sent this to me, and I thought it was amazing. They had told me that they are 15 years sober as of July 24th. And not many people know this. It's a topic that needs to be addressed. Why? Because there's no true recovery without God, without hope. And because there's always this thing called hope. And hope is at your disposal today. So can we just be honest with ourselves today? Can we always say, can we just be honest and say, look, I got to seek some help, but also not being so over-identified with the addiction and saying this is who I am, but knowing there is hope in whatever that you're in. So today I want to bring up our first speaker. Man, I'm so excited for this person to come up. I've been with this young man for the last several years, and I've seen this guy through his ups and his downs. I've had the privilege to walk through life with him. You know him very personally here in our group. Some of you have yet to get to know him, and if you don't know him very well, I promise you, if you take the time and the effort to talk to him, like you'll just be like instantly like in love with this dude because of his honesty and his vulnerability and his ability to just be open to the things that he has gone through in his life. But also, I want to be honest with some of you today. Some of you may not battle with addiction, but you know someone that does. You know somebody that does. You may not be the person, but you know that person. And honestly, I knew that person, and this person that I'm bringing up was that person. I've had the opportunity to walk with him, pray over him, and see breakthrough in his life. And you'll be amazed by his story. But will you guys do me the favor? Don't just give me those. I want to have like when the Browns score a touchdown type of love that you show. You got that? I want that type of love. Can I bring up my good buddy, Louis, folks? Come up to the stage. Love you, my guy. Love you, my guy. Take a seat. Louis, we're here, my G.
That we are.
It's been a long time coming, my guy. Man, Louis, you've gone through the youth ministry here. You're one of the leaders now here. That's amazing. That's always been my goal for each and every student, that they just wouldn't go through the ministry, but they have an opportunity to lead in the ministry, and he's doing great work. Am I right, guys? He's doing some great work. College kid. Not many college people are serving Jesus. You need to know, a lot of college kids are serving truly, but not a lot of people are serving Jesus. And I love that you have that opportunity to do this, and I'm glad that you are here. And I just want you to talk to us a little bit about just, I know the good side of Louis, but I've also seen the dark side of Louis. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, a little bit.
I've seen the Louis before the tattoos. All his homies, you know what that Louis is like, right? I see, what's up, boy? I haven't seen you in a while. What's up, boy? Your homie back there. Aaron, right? Aaron? What's up, Aaron? But I've gotten to see the good Louis, but I've also seen the dark side of Louis. Share with us just a little bit, man, about the dark side.
I mean, it's kind of funny because growing up, you could ask any of my buddies, I'd probably never be here speaking in front of people, let alone, speaking in a church on a topic such as this. Growing up, it was always, I never thought that I would get to a point of, trying some of the things that I did or whatever. And, finally, it kind of started in 8th grade when in 8th grade, I went to a K through 8 school, and after that, I had to make a decision on where I wanted to go to high school. And so I had my options, and I ended up deciding that it would be best if I just came out here to Olmsted Falls because it was free and it was convenient for everybody. So started out here, and it was weird kind of starting over because, I grew up with my friends, half my life, and, to start over, it wasn't something anybody really wants to do. It's uncomfortable, and, for me, being an introvert, it was difficult to make friends and whatnot. So I got out there, I came to Olmsted Falls in 2015, and I met a couple friends, and, it was fine, but it started to get easier, sophomore year, because, I was just getting more involved, and, the thing that kind of, got me involved and to meet people was skiing snowboard club. And when I started that, I started just like experiencing like what high school was like. And in high school, like it was much different than grade school. Like you have
Yeah.
just like you go to school, you do your work, whatever, but then you get to high school and there's kind of drama that starts.
Drama.
So-
Drama's in high school?
A little bit.
Okay. I didn't think so.
But for me, like I kind of stuck away from like the drama, but like it was just I've always had like a curious nature, and like I've always wanted to like try things. And so like for me, like addiction kind of started just like growing up around it, and like I had it in my family, and so like it was always like, oh, I'm gonna stick away from that, whatever. But in high school, it kind of got to a point of like, well, I mean, like other people around me are doing it, so I mean, maybe I'll try it. Like I remember the first time like I tried anything, like it's crazy how like addiction can start so small, but then it gets to a point where like it gets out of control.
Yeah.
And for me, like that took a while, but where it started was I remember I was at the house, whatever, and like there was a dad had a vape pen at the time, and I remember nobody was home, and I was like, I'm kind of curious what that's like. And so I tried it, and I was like, oh, like I enjoy this. Like this is cool. Like all the people around me are doing it. Like it's all right.
Wow.
And so from there, like got to a point I was like, all right, like I'm doing this alone, whatever. And I started doing it with friends. And then from there, like it got to a point of like my curiosity just kept peaking. Like I wanted to like try more things. And so I remember I was with my buddies and they started talking, and I got to a point like in the conversation they were talking about like they started smoking, and I was like weed, and they're like, yeah. I was like, all right, like
So you went from vaping to weed.
yeah.
Wow.
And like at the time, like it's just a transition. Like I'm a kid, like it's fine. Like I viewed it as like any other thing like I did. I'm like, it's whatever. Like I didn't
Right.
care. But like it was weird like when I had brought it up to him, because he mentioned it, and I was like, can I like come over sometime? He was like, are you sure? I was like, yeah. Like he like questioned me like several times whether or not I wanted to come over. I was like, yeah, like I want to come over.
Mm.
And I remember like the first time like we smoked, and I was just like, I didn't think like anything could like affect somebody in such a way, like take you out of like the norm of where you're at.
Wow.
And like it wasn't something like I enjoyed off them like in the moment, but like afterward, like I was like, like I want to try that again. And so like from there, like it continued on, and like it kind of became a habit as well as the vaping, and like it was something that kind of just became a part of my daily life. Like it was something I did until like that got to a point where like I had like a perceived notion on like how like something was gonna affect me. I remember talking to my buddy the one day, and like you always have like that intuition of like maybe something isn't right. And I remember we were talking, whatever, and like I thought I knew like what I was doing, whatever. And I remember we smoked, and I remember before we did like if you have smoked and you know like weed has a distinct smell, and like before like it didn't smell right, and I was like, buddy, are you sure? And he was like,
Oh, wow.
yeah. And I just remember like that night like getting home, and just like I don't even know how I got home, and just like what like I had experienced. It was just like
Yeah.
that's kind of like where my experience with God kind of came into being. Like I was like, man, like I really need God in my life. And so I got to church, and I started like I remember coming here for the first week and meeting Jovan, and him coming up to me. He's like, man, like you really got to come up to youth group, blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't want to come hang out with you and these people. Like it's fine. Like I don't want to be here.
Is that what you said?
Yeah,
We're
that's what I
talking
said.
after this.
But it got to a point, and I remember the next week, you're like, you're going to be there? I'm like, yeah, I'll be there next week. And I remember the next week happened, and I remember, like, like, during that week, like, my grandma had passed away. And, like, that was something that kind of took a big toll on me, because I hadn't really lost somebody in my life. And to experience that, it changed me. Like, it allowed me to realize, like, life is temporary. And, like, that's kind of where, like, my walk of faith started, is to realize that life is really temporary, and what we do with it is ultimately up to us. Like, God has given us free will to decide what we want to do with our lives, but a lot of the time we don't make the right decisions.
Right.
And
I want to go back to that one point. You said something about, like, you got with a buddy and I don't want to skip over it, but like you said, weed has a distinct smell, but you knew something was wrong. And like, so pretty much you had a bad trip that day. And like, and, you know, what was your, I mean, is that when you're kind of like, bro, like this has gone too far? Like, I don't know who's giving me this. I don't know where this is coming from. Like, was that the moment you were like really? Like, I could have died from this, or something worse could have happened.
Like in the moment, it definitely was like that. But then as life went on and time went on, like I was able to cope with it and overcome it. So like, it kind of got pushed to the wayside, and I continued on just with what I was doing. And like, after that experience, like I was able to quit for a little bit, but it was because I didn't really know God, and I was trying to lean on like my own strength. And so like, I was fine for a while, but then life kept hitting me, and like eventually like I'd be fine, but then like minor inconvenience would happen. I would go back to doing things or whatever, and it's like
You were running something. You were running to something to numb from something.
correct.
You know what I mean? Like you were. That's just naturally what we do. We run to stuff whenever
And it was
inconvenience,
because-
like you said, happens.
At that point in my faith, like I didn't understand like who God really was. Like growing up, like I knew of God, but I didn't know God.
Yeah.
Like that's how a lot of us are. Like we get to a point where we think we know God, but we just know of him. And
Right.
like when we truly learn more about God and not just show up on Sunday here or whatever, and we want to develop that relationship with him, it becomes more than that.
Right.
But in that season, like I was still just not knowing who God really was. And so
Right.
I continued on, and I was transitioning into my senior year, and then I just started going through a season. Like I was depressed, I was anxious like all the time. And in the beginning when I started these addictions, how they started small.
Let's not like. I remember you texting me these long texts about your depression, like these long texts, the anxiety that you were going through, and like I remember like at one point I was kind of like, man, of all the kids that I've been able to minister to, man, I don't know what to do next. Like I remember you at a really, really dark place. You hadn't come here in a while, and I was kind of like, and I felt like I got to the place where I was like, all right, because sometimes, you know, for those who are helping those out with addiction, because you always want to be there for people, no matter your position or your title, but like I had to really come to a place to the end of myself so I can really depend on God, because I started thinking like, well, as long as if I show up to this and I come up to this and I text him this and I text him that, and if I say the right words, then God said, well, then you're just being God right now. Well, get out the way and let me be God. And that was the hardest thing. And it wasn't like I was like, man, like he's just a lost cause. Like I didn't think that. I was just like, my bro is so dark right now. But that was the place where I let God just be God. And I was like, all right, man, you got him. You're for him. You're with him. And man, so tell me a little bit about, because you're sober now. It really took that long to, like, this was years of drinking, of smoking, of vaping, all those things. And his homeboys, like, you know, like, you know, when Louis got to that place, it was like, I don't know how to help this guy. But then you just, like, that's when you say, all right, but God does. And God did. And you're sober now. But the truth that the question I want to ask, how hard is it to stay clean?
Like going back to just like where we were at before, like it's definitely been difficult. And like even from like that season, I remember like at the start of it, like you preached a sermon on Corinthians
2 Corinthians chapter 5.
chapter 4.
Are you sure?
Chapter 4.
It's on the bottom of your shoe. It's on the bottom of your shoe.
Chapter 4.
It's on the bottom of your shoe.
Chapter 4.
It's on the bottom of your shoe. Is that the
Chapter
shoe?
4.
Is that the shoe?
It's the left shoe.
It's the left shoe? Show people. Show everybody. You suck.
But you preached 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 through 10. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body of death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. And like the time you preached that was when I was going through it, and it like gave hope, but at the same time it's like, why am I going through all these things? And like it was difficult to even understand like how God could put somebody through so much and still like care about them. And so when they were coming up, like I just didn't understand, because I thought the Christian faith was about God blessing us and providing for us and just being there and loving us, and it's really not. Like, that's false. Like, yes, God is there to bless us and provide for us, but he's also there to be with us through the dark seasons too.
Mm-hmm.
We can't truly appreciate the light unless we've seen the dark. And
Wow. Yeah.
when those seasons like occur, like James talks about in his book, that when we go through trials and like situations like that, it's not to like condemn us or whatever, it's to provide us with strength and to get through and to ultimately come out stronger. Because like if we're just doing the same old all the time, we're not going to grow in our faith. And our faith is a very active thing that we need to cultivate in our lives. It can't just be like we come here on Sundays. Like for me, like that helps, but like we got to go out each and every day trying to just share that love with those around us and provide them with what we want to, treat them the way we would want to be treated. And like people like to make the gospel so much more difficult than it has to be, and it's really just simple. And yet as humans we try and make it more difficult. And that's ultimately like what's helped me get through like and overcome like the addiction in general. Like yeah, it was a piece and like it was a coping, and like I didn't realize it was getting bad until like the people I was doing things with, like they were like, you got a problem.
When you told me that, when your homies were like, yo, you got a problem, it's like, well, you're doing the same thing.
Like it just felt very hypocritical, but at the same time, like I understood like where they were coming from. Like how can somebody who's doing the same thing as you tell you you've got a problem? And it's like, maybe you do.
Wow.
And just like always being there in those seasons, like I ultimately, like I said, turned to these substances as a way of coping. Like in the beginning it was fun and I enjoyed it, and like that's what has made ultimately being sober and like staying clean is just it was something I enjoyed. Like it wasn't as if like it was something I didn't like. It's difficult. Like it's got its moments. Like I still like go through those difficult times, and it's like, man, like just one more hit, or like maybe I'll just drink tonight. Like it's still there. Temptation is real. Like it doesn't go away. But like since I've come to know who Christ really is and like the freedom that I found in that, like nothing in the world, like nothing the world can offer you will take the place of that. And like I've realized that going through like the dark seasons with the depression and the anxiety with the panic attacks, like all of that, like it had a purpose. And I didn't realize that till recently, because before I started even coming to this church, like I remember coming here with my mom, and like we were just driving in the parking lot, like practicing driving, and didn't think anything of it. But not until I really realized like what Christ has done in my life and why I'm here, like I came back here and I was in the field in the back just praying, and like I'd ask God, I'm like, why do you even love somebody like me who messes up and fails and falls short? And it's not because like any of us are lovable, but it's because God is loving. And to really understand what that means, like it's taken time. Like I'm not even fully there, but God loves us in such a way that nobody else can.
Wow.
And it's truly amazing once you like understand that. It's helped me to just overcome and feel the freedom that he has given us through Jesus. Like
Amen. Amen to that. Well, I want to get real practical before we jump back into our worship. To be honest with you, I'm very, very honored to be a part of your life, man, and have that small, small drip of influence. I know there are many people in this room today that are a part of that, but man, just to see your story, and here's the reason why we tell stories, because stories birth more stories. You know what I mean? Like, his story becomes one of your stories one day, or somebody that you know who is struggling, their story one day. Because, again, a lot of us think that, well, I don't struggle with what Louis struggles with. No, but you have a struggle, right? I don't have that addiction what Louis has, but you still have that addiction. And the truth of the matter is, man, like, what you're doing today is birthing what somebody's going to eventually do tomorrow. And God is using you and molding you into the man of Christ he wants you to be. And from the bottom of my heart, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. And keep it up, because people are watching you. Like, look at that. Like, you got people watching online. They're watching you now. You got your little brother back there, Young D. What up, boy? You got that strong neck. He got the strongest neck ever. His neck is like... Next question. So, let me ask you a question. What do you have to say to the person that either suppresses or denies their addiction?
I mean, like, you kind of covered it in the beginning. Like, what I have to say is, like, if you're lying to yourself, like, you're not really helping anybody. Like, you got to be honest at least with yourself. Like, you can lie to everybody around you, but if you're not honest with yourself, like, I wasn't even honest with myself. Like, I told myself I didn't have a problem, but until I realized, like, that I had a problem, it wasn't going to solve itself. And that you can't do it alone. You can't overcome it alone. Like, I had tried so many times to just overcome it by myself. Like, I thought I could do it. And it wasn't until, like, I was like, God, like, I need your strength to get through this. Like, I need your help. Like, I can't do it by myself.
Yeah.
It was impossible. Like,
Right.
I couldn't do it.
Amen. Amen.
Those are, like, the two biggest things is don't lie to yourself about it. Like, if you have an addiction and you have a problem, at least be honest with yourself. Like,
Right.
you can't lie to yourself. You got to live with yourself.
Right.
I don't have to live with anybody else, but I have to live with me.
Right.
And
Amen.
to just trust God with it. Like, God's strength is enormous. Like, when we try and limit his strength, it doesn't work. Like, God is limitless. So in any situation, just trust that he can do it. And it sounds difficult, but it's a start to having, like, a huge faith is just to trust God.
Right. Right.
It's the biggest thing.
Right. Yeah, I think what you just said was so helpful. And tonight I want people to know, like, there's always a reason for the addiction, because, like, we're not talking about the action, we're talking about the motive that drives the action, right? So many people are like, stop smoking. Well, I don't want to stop smoking. But then once you figure out why you smoke in the first place, you'll be like, dang, like, I really got that to that place that I allowed myself to get to this place. And you can't get there unless you're honest, right? Unless you're speaking in the truth, right? You can't seek truth if you're not truthful with yourself. You can't find it if you're not truthful with yourself. Like, man, like, again, it's not the action that's the issue. It's the motive that's driving it. It's really a desire that's from God. We're just fulfilling it with worldly things, right? So when somebody goes and looks at pornography, that's a desire God gave us, right? That's a desire that's from God. But what happens is we try to fill it with the world, right? It's a story of Adam and Eve, right? It's a story of Adam and Eve, and that's what happened with them. They tried to fulfill something that was good, because God, when he created the world, everything was good. Everything was great. And then what happens is they took what was worldly and replaced it with what God wanted to give them. And that's the same thing with everybody else in this room today. Like, a lot of us are trying to stuff worldly things with godly desires. And that's the quickest way to being trapped. And so, man, I just want to say one more time, bro, I'm so thankful for you. I want to invite the worship team back up here. We're going to continue to worship, continue our night. I'm so proud of you, bro. Like, man, it takes a lot of vulnerability to get up here, but I've always said, like, vulnerability is the best way to freedom. It's the way to freedom. It's being honest, being vulnerable, being open. And any last things you want to add before we close, before we move on to the next part?
I know we talked about it, but for me, like, a story that always stuck out to me is, like, God always willing to find his lost children. And, like, knowing that I was lost at one point, and it took so long for me to be found, not because God couldn't find me, but I wasn't willing to be found at that moment.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it takes time, but God will always find you. It's
Yeah.
just you have to be willing to be found.
Right. Right. Amen. All right. Let me say a prayer. And then we're getting into worship. Dear God, I am thankful for this man of this caliber, that obviously you are at work in his heart, in his life, in his soul, and even in his past, but most importantly, in his future. And God, I pray that his words that he just spoke penetrated the hearts of those who needed to hear it. Because I know, Lord, and you know as well, that there are some people that are pushing this to the side. But there are a lot of kids in this room today that I'm seeing tears fall from their eyes that are saying to themselves, I'm that kid. And Lord, if you can change Louis, you could change any of us. If you can save a man who was addicted, a man who was trapped, a man who was stuck in a place of real addiction, then you can reach any of us as well. So Lord, I thank you for that. And I'm honored to be your son. I'm honored to be in the family. And I'm in there not because I'm so good, but as Louis stated, and your word states, because you're so good. You are a good God who loves me to be better, who doesn't condemn or flinch when I tell you my deepest and darkest things. I can come to you with my shame. I can come to you with the dirt. I can come to you with the brokenness. You don't flinch and you don't run away. As a matter of fact, you stay. You remind me who I am and what I'm not. And I know you can do the same thing for these students today. I pray that in this next session that we would continue to incline our understanding in the truth of your word, of your freedom, and of your grace. We love you and we honor you. In Christ's name is who we pray. Amen.
I need you to solve what you say, that you're good, your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. I may be weak, your spirit strong in me. My flesh may fail, my God, you never will. 'Cause I may be weak, but your spirit strong in me. My flesh may fail, my God, you never
Is it just a voice?
will. 'Cause I may be weak, but your spirit strong in me. My flesh may fail, my God, you never will.
Go ahead and take a seat, take a seat. We got one more speaker for each and every one of you. How about that talk? How about our friend Louis? Can we give it up for him one more time? So proud of that young man. And here's the thing, friends, I want you guys to know this. There's a story inside of each and every one of you. There's a story that's inside of each and every one of you. And here's the thing, it's waiting to be heard. It's waiting to be heard. And there is somebody like Louis just did who needs to hear your story of deliverance, your story of breakthrough. But we know that every story begins with God and begins with Christ. And I'm so excited that I get to give the opportunity, because that's what Christianity is about, is how God changed our lives. About we were in a horrendous state. Did you know that ever since COVID, the effects of it, again, we're so worried about COVID itself, which I understand, which I get it. We need to monitor it, whatever, get your shots, mask, whatever you believe, I understand. But the real pandemic happened behind the scenes. The pandemic of anxiety. The pandemic of addiction. We're gonna get into some of those stats today. And some of the stats that we're gonna talk about with our next speaker are crazy. There's so many kids that just wanted to hide in their room and stay in their room and be there as long as they could, being on their device, being on their computer, just playing video games and all these things, not knowing that the thing that you thought was giving you freedom was actually making you more and more trapped. Isn't that interesting? The things that we go to give us freedom actually makes us more and more trapped. Makes us more and more of a slave. Makes us more and more trapped. So today's speaker, or the next speaker, I would say, is somebody that's going to come at it from a different angle and come at it from you guys to a place where it's going to build your understanding of why this is so important for us to talk about, but also for us to make sure we're investing, but also we're seeking and searching the resources that are available to us. That's the help part. Some of you don't know, man, there's help out there for you. There is genuine help for those who are stuck in depression, stuck in anxiety, stuck in a place where it's just killing their soul. There is help for you. And there's the stats that are going to remind us and tell us, like, man, if we don't go at this, that it's going to continue to spread. It's going to continue to spread. Suicide has been up. And I guarantee you there are some of you in this room today that has crossed your mind. That it would be better if I just do this. It would be better if I just did that. So today I want to invite up a speaker. Now, this person was supposed to come a very long time ago. A very long time ago. And then again, of course, as you guys know, with everything that becomes a hiccup, that was a hiccup in 2020, COVID hit, and we were unable to meet. But God still wanted to use this person to speak to us on this night to give us the information that we need so we can be free and tap into the resources that we have. I want to invite a good friend up. Now listen, the love you showed Louis. Now some of you know Louis. You're gonna praise Louis. That's great. But this person's a little bit nervous. They've never spoken in front of teenagers before. And you guys don't understand. Speaking in front of teenagers is nerve-wracking. Because I don't know what you're thinking. Are you thinking like his ankles are really chubby? Oh my gosh. His head's really big. He looks like Kevin Hart. Like, oh my gosh. Shut up, shut up. It's hard talking to teenagers, but this is what I want to do. I want you to give some L-O-V-E-E. I'll put 2 E's at the end. L-O-V-E-E for our next speaker. Can I bring up my good friend, Emily? Come on up. Hello.
I would like to disclaim, though, I have spoken in front of teenagers, just not this
just
size.
not this size. I miss
It's more like
quote.
low-key. A microphone, I'm like, Jovan, why do we need a microphone? We're both super loud. Like, y'all hear me next door.
That is true. Whenever we spoke, people in the office were like, we're going to put on our headphones. These two are very loud.
I get too excited.
We do. We both get excited.
I know.
We both get
I can't
excited.
help it.
It's good to see you, Emily.
I know. This has been a long time coming. I first reached out to Jovan, February, March last year?
Oh, yeah. First, yeah, yep, that's true. It was
Yeah.
February. February, we were meeting, and then
And
everybody
I'm like,
stay
what?
indoors.
What am I going to do now? I don't
Exactly.
even know.
Exactly.
None of us knew.
So Emily, just real quick, again, let everybody know, who you are, what you do, why you do what you do, and then we'll jump right into
All right.
our discussion for tonight.
So my name is Emily Winfield. I have my bachelor's degree in public health, so addiction stuff lines right up with it. I work for the Licata Way. Does anyone know what that is or heard of it or anything? I like asking that question. Okay,
You heard
so
of it?
like 3 hands I see. Yeah, so we're in schools, we're in the community. I'm more in the community than in schools, but a lot of my coworkers go to schools. I'm a prevention educator. So essentially, though, the Licata Way is a recovery and prevention center. I don't like using the term rehab just because of that stigma that might come with that term, so I like to say recovery and prevention because it just sounds like a little nicer, more clean, things like that. I've been there for almost 2 years. In October will be my 2-year anniversary.
Ooh.
Get that pay raise, too.
Come on, girl.
So I'll be happy about
Come
that.
on, girl.
But I've always been interested in substance abuse, drugs, alcohol, all that stuff. I've always had like some sort of like fascination with it, even in high school. And even kind of like in middle school too, I've always just thought it was kind of interesting to learn about it.
Right.
So I am a statistics person. I have a little presentation when we do talk about like youth statistics. I like looking at the facts, just the hard stuff.
Yeah. So, and what's really interesting, Emily, before we get into that, now, we already talked about this guy, so I'm not putting her on the spot, because some of y'all think that I'm evil and everything. You came into your position, and it's perfect because it's like your purpose, and
Yeah.
your purpose was birthed from your past.
Yeah, so when I was 19, I got in trouble at school. I was at college, got in trouble for underage drinking, not once, but twice, within 4 months of each other. You think I would have learned the first time because I did have to attend classes. I actually really enjoyed attending those classes, so I continued them because it helped me a lot with my emotional state. It helped me just feel better about myself because, college is scary. You're on your own for the first time in your life. Mom and dad aren't there. You're living with people you don't really know. I was living with someone who I thought was my friend, and it just was not a good situation. So after attending these classes, it's like, I didn't know you can make a career out of this. And I loved it. I fell in love with it. My counselor's name was Jen Berry. I still remember her to this day. I remember exactly what she looks like. Loved her to death. The director of Drug, Alcohol, and Wellness Center was like a personal good friend of mine who I use even to this day as a reference if I'm applying for jobs. I'm like, you have the coolest job. Talking to college students and programming with them, I loved it. I was like, I'm gonna have your job one day. And so I don't have her job because I'm not at a college campus, but I have something similar.
Yeah.
I program with youth. I love working with the high schoolers more than like younger kids, just because high schoolers are more real. They're getting ready for real life.
Right.
They understand what you're talking about. Like you don't have to dumb it down for them
Yeah.
either.
Right.
And
Right.
so I love working with kids.
Right.
to be
And I
honest.
think one thing the high school kids love, what teenagers love is like you just said, when you don't talk to them like they're dumb, and you really like hit the areas that matter to them, that are like in their, that are just, it's something that they face. And I try to carry that as much as I can when interacting with them, when talking with them. It's like they're facing real life.
Yeah.
You know, and these kids are going to face real experiences, like experiences that they've never ever imagined they would, like going to a party and cocaine is right there,
Yeah.
or
The
going,
peer pressure.
the peer pressure of that, or again, to kind of shift off the substance that we have been talking about, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. But like, the pressure of having sex, the many other things that a lot of these kids, just like, man, a lot of these guys, they face this stuff, and it's like you make decisions off impulses and emotions.
Yeah,
and
we'll talk about that.
We're going to talk about that in just a little bit.
Don't
so,
get too much.
My bad, girl, my bad. See, this is just what we do. Love talking to this girl. So tell me, real quick, I want to ask this one question to kind of segue into, again, we've talked about it a little bit, but I felt like with your expertise and your profession, you can give us a little bit more understanding. Why do we minimize the many other addictions that are just as dangerous, just as hurtful, just as harmful in our lives? Why do we do that?
I think personally it's a lot with the media. Looking back 40 years ago, this stuff wasn't really talked about that much. It was kind of swept under the rug. It was a family issue. Like, okay, dad came home drink from the bar. That's a family issue. That's not a community issue. That's not
Wow.
anyone else's issue but the families. Where it's like nowadays, we know, if dad's coming home from the bar every night or something and is doing other things, like he needs help.
Right.
He needs more than just family.
Right.
And so it is the media, because even to this day, look how far we've gone from the past 5 years ago.
Right.
How things have progressed. So I think we're still getting there on some issues, just like you mentioned before, like gambling. When I first started this job, I'm actually the gambling prevention specialist for Licata. And so my boss, I remember sitting down when he was interviewing me, and he was asking me, what's a loot box? Do you know what a loot box is? And I'm
know
just
what a loot box is?
I'm like, oh, crap, I just bombed it. I'm like, I just bombed this interview. But no, it's just, I didn't know what that was. A loot box is in video games. I don't play video games, so how am I supposed to know, It's just you need to be educated on it.
Yeah.
So it is the media a lot have to do, because we all know people have issues with alcohol, marijuana, fentanyl, cocaine, things like that. But what about shopping addictions? What about your body image, social media, video games? All that stuff can just be as bad as alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad we're giving that light today, because, it's just default thought is addiction. Oh, that's not my problem. I don't really have that. But not knowing that, well, you do have it. It's just, you just minimize it and you suppressed it and all those things. And you gave we're going to talk about stats in a little bit. I didn't think teenagers struggle with gambling.
Yeah.
Like-
Who plays video games?
Anybody play with it?
All right, what kind of video games do you play? Just shout it out. What about Fortnite?
They're too old. They're too old. That's like
What about COD or FIFA or Madden? You guys know what loot boxes are? Yeah. So we'll talk about this too, the psychological effect. A loot box gives when your brain lights up. They've done studies on this. Your brain lights up when you open a loot box, right? You get excited, you get nervous, what am I gonna get? It's gonna be, you don't know what you're gonna get. They're surprise boxes, right? So you could get a new weapon, you can get some rocks, you could get a new suit of armor, your little skins. It's the same effect that if you were at a casino playing slots.
Oh, wow.
The same parts of your
Wow.
brain lights up if you were to open a loot box, or if you were to, well, it's not a hole anymore, it's a button, but if you were to be at the slots.
What part of the brain is that? Is that the? All right, let me make sure. Okay, the amygdala.
Yeah. All parts of it like light up. But yeah.
Oh, okay, done. Okay, well, I don't feel as smarter.
Believe me, it's okay.
So speaking of that, and then now we're going to get into the brain a little bit. Tell me a little bit about the stats.
So I do have a presentation if you wanted to pull that up, just because I am one of those people, I have to see things to really register it. Like I could give you off numbers and you're like, wait, what'd she say?
Yeah.
So, excuse me, I'm gonna use my phone though too, because I have it my
No problem.
presentation. So I took this survey, I did a lot of research. This is it's from 2018 because with the Pride survey, it comes out every 2 years. It's either 2 or 4 years, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember that. No one at work even remembered. So 2018 is the last data that I have from the Pride survey. The Pride survey is basically for Lorain County, okay? So that's one thing you gotta keep in mind. Pride, Lorain County. So with the 2018 Monitoring the Future survey, that's more national. So if you go to the next slide, I think. So it just says like the sampling for the Pride survey and for the Monitoring the Future. So in Lorain County, 2,765 students were surveyed. And this is between the grades 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th. With Monitoring the Future, a bit bigger, there's gonna be around 11,000 or almost 12,000 students. This is from 112 public and private schools, whereas with the Pride survey, it's just our public schools. So how's this data used? How is the data used? So it basically just gives us an idea of what you guys are thinking on some of these things, like how much you're using, if you're not using, what are you using the most of, things like that. So the first one I have is tobacco, e-cigarettes, and marijuana. So remember, this is from 2018. So I would like to make a disclaimer for the Monitoring the Future. When I was looking for this kind of information for e-cigarettes and vaping, they've been surveying for 30 years. So since like 1991. With vaping, they've only been surveying for 3 years. So it's from 2015. Obviously, it's a bit more, but I wanted the 2018 so it matches the Pride survey. And I can always get that information too. It's actually really cool to look online and like find all that stuff.
Right.
It's a huge table. It's real confusing to look at, but it's
Right.
real like fun for me at least.
Right.
So if you look at Lorain County though, 12th graders reported 30-day past use, so within the past month, that 30.6% used marijuana and 36.9% used e-cigarettes.
Wait, they're vaping more than weed now?
Well, it's both. You can actually have concentration,
What the
liquid
what?
marijuana into your vape pens.
I never knew that.
And we're seeing a lot of that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's actually pretty scary, just because it does cause a
they're
lot of
mixing
issues.
weed and they're mixing marijuana and nicotine?
Yeah.
Dang.
It doesn't have to it could be just marijuana, it could just be nicotine. But also, when you're doing that, there's hundreds of chemicals that come along with that. I mean, we all know when we were raised, we knew cigarettes were bad for you. They told you there's hundreds and hundreds of chemicals in it. It's not just tobacco anymore. But even in the tobacco plant, there's hundreds of chemicals. But with vaping, it's actually pretty scary because it's brand new. It's really not that old. I mean, when I was in grade school, we didn't know what this was. You know, and then when I was in high school, no one really did it. It was for people
Right.
who were like older trying to quit smoking.
Right.
So it kind of had a backlash on
So
that.
you're saying with the studies of vaping, it's so new that we don't know the real true. I mean, we know the effects, but like we're still learning about
Yeah.
Wow.
Whereas
yeah.
like tobacco's
Oh, wow.
been around for hundreds of years. Native Americans use them in their rituals. You know, we look back at the 40s and 50s, pregnant women were smoking. They didn't realize it had birth defects. They didn't put it two and two
Right.
together.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, we know so much more about traditional cigarettes, nicotine, things like that. Whereas with these e-cigarettes, they're new. We're still learning. They like to do long-term studies. This stuff really hasn't been around that much. You know,
Which
it's-
actually makes it scarier
yeah,
if you think about it.
yeah.
Because here we are. I mean, some of the stats, it seems like vaping is like a big in-your-face thing, and like we don't know what it really does to us.
I run a program on Thursday nights. It's called Eduvention. It's a program for youth who get in trouble with either at school or with the courts, things like it's a 4-week program. But we do talk about vaping, nicotine, marijuana. That's one of our sessions. And probably like 90% of the kids that I get from just schools, not courts, but just schools, is vaping reasons.
Wow. Dang.
The fact that they'll have them on it or like have them like on them.
Wow.
They'll go to the bathroom. Why would you go to the bathroom? That's the first place teachers are going to check.
So can I tell you a joke a kid told me?
Oh, goodness.
A kid told me a joke. He's like, who put a toilet in the vape room?
Yeah, literally. It's the vape room. I mean,
I
back
was
in
just
the
like,
80s,
oh, I get it, because you're vaping
there
in the
people used to
bathroom.
smoke cigarettes. It's now just vapes.
Right.
But yeah, so it is becoming a huge trend we're seeing. It's so funny how the history behind e-cigarettes, because they weren't even meant for what they are now. They were supposed to help people quit smoking cigarettes,
Right.
traditional cigarettes. And then all of a sudden, they got the tasty flavors. I always ask the youth, I'm like, what flavors do you guys even use? And they're like, iced banana, fruit punch, strawberry banana. And I'm like, you know what also sounds like that? I'm like, a smoothie. I'm like, I look at that, I'm like, mint, they have mint, and I'm like,
That was a good
mint
one.
chocolate chip ice cream.
That was a good one.
No, I say that. I'm like, I'd rather probably just have a smoothie. Like, I don't.
Right.
But
I didn't
anyways,
think about it like that.
they were looking at me like, Miss Emily, you're so
Right.
lame. And I'm like, I'm not the one who's in trouble right now.
Right.
So
Right.
who's the lame one right now? Like, I don't have to deal with expulsion or
exactly,
suspension or
exactly.
courts.
Exactly.
But then I can't judge too much because I was in their shoes at one point. So
So the stats are staggering.
yeah,
And
they are growing. But then if you look at, monitoring the future, I actually really like this one because it shows increases from the years. So 8th graders reported the past 30 days use of marijuana is just 5.6%, but that's a 0.1 increase from 2017. So when I go through it, you guys can read, so I'm not going to go through every single thing because it is kind of a lot. But then you look, so we're going from 8th to 12th grade. 8th graders report the past 30 days use of marijuana as 22.2%. That's actually a decrease from 2017, but it still is a huge jump between 8th grade and 12th grade.
Sure.
So even though there is that little decrease, it's still a huge jump.
Let me ask you a question. When you see a jump like that, what do you think is like the reason for that jump? Like, is it because kind of like what Louis talked about a little bit, the pressure that they're going through?
Peer
and-
pressure, families. You'd be surprised. A lot of these youth that I get, their parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, some family members doing it, so they see it as normal. The parent might even give it to them to try to get them so they're not to get in trouble. Like, here, if you do it under my house, my rules, like, it should deflect you from getting in trouble.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that. Like,
Right.
so, I mean, their intentions might be good, but it just doesn't work.
Sure.
So it is pretty scary just to see that. But you also have to remember that, like, some of these parents nowadays, like, they grew up with it being normalized, whereas we're now our mindset's kind of changing. You know, 5 years ago, things were totally different than how they are now.
Right.
And 5 years isn't really that long of a time.
Right.
But yeah, and then if there's an alcohol one too, if you wanted to go to the next slide, we can just leave that up though, so you guys can read and we can move on.
Right.
Because we do have a lot.
So, kind of really, a lot of these, when kids see these things that we talk about, because I've, like I said, 6.5 years dealing with youth. So a lot of them, they're like, this isn't a big deal. Like, if I smoke, drink, do all these other things once, twice a month, like, it's not a big deal. Like, moderation, because we all like to think moderation is our answers. Like, what do you have to say to that? Because, they do this, their Google search, and then Wikipedia would tell them, If you vape once a month, you're fine. You know, there's no long effects. But like, just what do you have to do? What do you have to say to kind of those?
Referring back to Eduvention, that is probably like one of my favorite programs to run because it is just so informational. We do one of our sessions, it's the continuum of use.
This is my favorite one.
Yeah.
my
So
favorite
we
one.
do go through this, and I would like to point out is that when we get a youth that is referred, there's a youth side and a parent side. So how we talk to each side about the continuum of use is going to be different. So, you know, the continuum of use is just the stages that we like to define with substance use or abuse or addiction. And so I like to use the analogy of drawing a line in the sand. That line gets blurred, you know? So you might think you're okay just smoking once a month, but then maybe you up it to once a week. Maybe then you up it a bit more because you're not getting that same feeling as that very first time, and you're never going to either. So the continuum use, you know, you go from experimental and the last stage is addiction. No one wakes up one day and was like, I want to be addicted today. Like, no one does. It is a
Right.
stage, a process you go through. You know, Louis talked about how he experimented with juuling and things like that. So, and like when he was talking, I was just like thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, I see. I see. I'm like, I know where
Right.
you're at.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like nobody wakes up and just like the intentions are like, you know, maybe pure, but like it's this idea where we're just creatures who want more.
Yeah. And that's because
we're creatures who are never
your
satisfied.
brain, too,
Right.
gets rewired. We'll talk
Right.
about it in the psychological effects, which is the next
Let's,
question.
let's go over that a little
Yeah.
bit. Tell me a little bit about like just how does addiction psychologically, like how does addiction,
All right, so I have a question for you guys first. What age is the brain fully developed at?
oh,
Who said 25? 25 is the correct answer. Just because you are 18 and legally adult doesn't mean that your brain is thinking like a fully developed adult.
ooh, you're making some parents happy right now.
Right?
You're making some parents happy, girl. Like,
You know,
and these kids do, oh man, she said it, not me. No, go ahead.
it is. But yeah, so your prefrontal cortex, that's right here. If you guys like anatomy or biology, I do not. My best friend's fiance is a biology teacher for high school, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But anyways, your prefrontal cortex, that is going to be the last part of your brain to develop. That is your decision making, your critical thinking, pros and cons of a decision. Is this good or bad? Is this gonna hurt me or help me, you know? That's the last to develop. So when you're 15, you're working more towards the back of your brain. You're working with your limbic system, which is going to be your reward system. That releases dopamine into your brain. Dopamine's your happy chemical. So if you see a cute puppy and you get super excited.
Or a cute guy like me.
Yeah. I like cats, so when I see my cat, I get super excited because, like, he loves me so much.
Sure.
But it's the same with if you take a drink of alcohol, if you
Oh,
smoke
really?
marijuana, you know, you're going to have a surge of dopamine. And so with that, though, it's like if you're dealing with anxiety or depression and you turn to a substance, your brain makes that connection of, oh, this is going to fix it.
Wow.
Because that it rewires your brain. So you're not thinking like a person who hasn't been on substances or, and I say substances, and that's alcohol, drugs, but same with gambling. Same with video games, you know. So I might just say substances, but just know I'm talking about like everything, kind of.
Sure.
Because, you know, you hit a big win, you're going to be happy with that. I know I would.
Right.
But yeah, so that's like what really happens. And we talk more about this with a program that hopefully we're going to do.
Yeah. So, you know, with that being said, like our biggest, I liked how you said, I think it's very key to bring up, when do guys' brains fully develop?
Guys is a little bit later than women, so
What do you
I'm
mean?
so sorry.
What do you mean?
If you like men, you have to deal with immaturity a tad longer. So it's like 26, 27.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
But on average,
I'm 20.
it is,
I'm 25.
you're not 25. You told me you weren't 25.
Shut up. But I thought it's interesting. You know, so many of us, when it comes to decision making, we always make it for the moment, not for the later. You know, what we feel now, we make dominant.
Yeah.
you know, and it's interesting that the brain, like I said, the brain like is not fully there to say, hey, but what about this?
Yeah. It's like if you're 21, you're at the bar, you're drinking, having a few with your friends, you know, and you're like, all right, I'm only going to have like 2 or 3. We'll be good. I'm going to be there a couple hours. I'm going to be good. Well, next thing you know, you're pouring back the pitcher, drinking a bit too much, and you're having a good time with your friends. But then the decision to drive home, you know.
Right.
And then what happens? You know, there's drunk driving all the time. If you get arrested or pulled over and things like that, like you should be lucky because you didn't kill yourself or someone else.
Yeah.
You know, things like so they're not thinking
Yeah.
as a 35-year-old might think. And a 35-year-old isn't thinking how a 45-year-old is thinking. So it progresses, you know.
Right. That's so helpful, you know, and kind of to make it practical, you know, what is something, you know, what we've been talking about, which we're excited about, what is something these kids, because at the end of the day, my prayer and my hope for you guys is that this isn't just a lecture that you receive, but it's something to help you to go into action. Like, all right, what do I need to do next? Like, what is next? Because you can either continue to sit in it or you can try to find freedom in it. And I think God provides opportunities, not just at church, right? Because he's a God of all, not just at church, but also outside, like organizations like this that help us towards the freedom that we want to possess. And tell us a little bit about just how these kids can find that help and connecting with you guys, and share a little bit about what we've been talking about.
Yeah, so it's hard when you're a teen. It doesn't even get easier when you're 20s. I'm sure it doesn't get easier after that. Life is hard. You know, so you gotta swallow your pride sometimes and say, like, I need help. Not just family and friends and spiritual, but like a professional help. You know, we're not here to judge you on anything either. We're like, okay, you accepted that you need help, let's go from there. And recovery is not one size fits all. It's all different moving pieces and parts. It's a puzzle. You got to figure out what works best for you. You know, if Jovan and I were both in recovery for something for him might not work for me. And it's the same for everyone, you know. It might not just work just because it worked for someone else. So I definitely recommend, like, if you feel like you, even with anxiety or depression, sometimes going to a counselor is so much better than just talking to your friends or family about it, because they can give you professional help. They can give you third-party opinions. I'm very open and honest about, like, my past. I have panic attack disorder. I have anxiety disorder. I have depression. I've been to counselors before to deal with all that stuff. You know, sometimes life gets too overwhelming for me, so I have to pause. You know, I have to seek that help from someone. And it's been on and off, so it's not like a continuous thing. But, you know, like a couple of summers ago, I probably went for 4 months straight, once a week, you know. So it's like that's my struggle.
Right.
But it's the same. And then I stopped. I was feeling better, you know. I've been good, like not good, but I've been doing better since.
Right.
But it's just like you got to know that not just because I did that and it worked for me doesn't mean that it's going to work for you.
Right,
You have to
right.
figure that out for yourself.
Right. And so Emily and I want to partner very closely, you know, within the next several months of, you know, man, not only do we want to just tell you to get help, we want to make space for help. So tell
I'm
us a little-
super excited because it's a program called Risky Business. I love it. It is one of my favorite just because it is, you know, with Eduvention, it's more serious. It's more, you know, you messed up, let's fix it. With this, it's just talking. It's open conversations. There's a couple different lessons, you know, so we go through decision making. We go through youth and violence. We go through youth and gambling, drugs and alcohol facts, drugs and alcohol prevention. We do activities, so it's not just you're going to be sitting here talking or listening to me talk the whole time. It's interactive, you know.
Right.
I like playing games, and I like having conversations and not just me spewing out facts. Like, that's
Right.
boring. You know, I
Right,
want you
right.
guys to get engaged with
Right.
things and you to realize things that you might not know about.
Right.
So, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys probably don't know too much about it because it's not as talked about as it might be or as it should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So our future, our idea, the doors that we want to open is that we want to bring you guys in, provide a 6-week class potentially, and invite leaders and people to come in to again to be educated, to know, and maybe those who are struggling and suffering through it can also find some peace and some help from it as well. So when that rolls out, man, I hope each and every one of you would look to take advantage of that, because again, I believe this is a resource from God to help us to find the freedom or the information or the education that we all long for. And so with that being said, I'm very grateful that you emailed me. I get like all these emails like, can we come talk to your youth? Can we come talk to your youth? I'm like, delete. You corny, delete. No, you delete. But there was something that struck me about you guys when I read the information and how much you are so about the youth and so about, because here's the thing, I mean, they are us tomorrow. These are, they're gonna have to be in their 30s.
Yeah.
They're gonna get married and they're gonna have children and they're gonna have jobs. And my goal is to set them up now so that at 35, they're not struggling with 15-year-old self.
And also, no, 35 is not old. People joke, I'm 26, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you're so old. Like, okay.
They call me old all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, no, wait till you're 30 or something.
They call me old man all the time.
You do sound like Kevin Hart, by the way. I forgot to say that. You're not old, but you do sound like Kevin Hart.
That wraps up our night tonight. Let's say thank you to Emily, guys. No, but also, let's wrap it up. I'm so thankful for Emily and her coming in.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much.
After the last song, guys, come up and talk to her. Show her some love. Man, say thank you to her. And any questions you guys may have, please ask her. She'll be more than welcome and happy to answer them. So let me say one more prayer before we jump into our last song. Father, thank you again. Lord, let this be a moment that we take advantage of. Let this be a time that we take a step forward. Let this be a time that we receive all that was laid out at our feet. I'm thankful for our speakers tonight. They spoke to us from an emotional level, from an educational level, from a professional level, from a personal level, through experience and all these things. But all that they spoke, Lord, I pray that at the end of the day that we would hear from you and you would whisper to our hearts. Because God, I've seen the tears tonight, and they're flowing. I've seen the stress in some of these kids' faces, and it's real. And they're questioning, okay, how do I get this? Where do I get this? And so I want to lead us in a prayer today. If you're longing for that freedom, if you're longing for that grace, if you're longing for this place where you're not constantly trapped, and you're not going back to the thing that you hate doing, the thing that brings so much shame in your life, I'm going to pray this prayer with you. Dear God, you see me, broken and all, dirty, trapped, confused, stressed, frustrated, anxious and depressed, suicidal. And yet you don't flinch. You stay there and you say, give me what you have in exchange for what I can give. Help us to know that in all of it, we're loved. Lord, I trade what's dirty about me in exchange of what's good about you. I give you my flaws. I give you all the things that bring me low. And Lord, I know I shouldn't do the things, but I end up doing them anyway. I keep going back to them every weekend, every day, every week. And I want to be free. I just don't know how to be free. I want to be clean. I just don't know what it takes to stay clean. I want to change. I just don't know how to change. And then there's Jesus. There's Jesus right there, whispering to our ears, saying this, give it to me. Give it to me. It's no good in your hands. If it's in your hands, it creates more havoc and chaos and destruction. But when it's in my hands, it's redeemed. It's restored. It becomes purposeful. And I use it. So, Lord, I give it all to you. Pray to every kid in this room today who is battling through some serious addiction. The kid that excessively spends. The kid that excessively searches and is trapped with pornography every day. The kid that just feels like in order to get rid of the problems, they have to drink themselves. In order to get rid of the problems, they have to smoke. I pray that they would give what's on them in exchange of what you have. The grace and the love and the peace and the mercy. Because, Lord, you are the place of freedom. I love the quote that was repeated earlier. There is no full recovery without God in his presence. So we give it all to you. In your perfect name is who we pray. Amen.
Down on my knees again.
You know, the idea of surrendering means like I'm not in control anymore because I've lost control, right? I'm not in control because I've lost control. Things have become so chaotic and so crazy that I need one who sustains and maintains control. You know, it gets to a point where things get so desperate that it points us to a greater need, to our greatest need, and that's Christ. And it's at his feet and it's at his presence we get to just say, I surrender. It's all on you, and I give it all to you. You have control. You have your way in my heart. You have your way in my life. Because I've noticed when I have the keys, I end up in the pit more than I would like to. But when I give you complete control, the path is clear and it's straight. And that's what surrender looks like. And that's what complete freedom looks like as well. Hey, let's give it up for our speakers one more time. Awesome night. Love you guys. Thank you all for being here. Hey, don't forget to show some love to Emily and Louie. I'll see you guys later on. Love you guys. Peace. Talk to you soon.